People are always wanting to know, what cool shit do I get to put on my M4 when I join the Army? Well, I'm gonna cover that in today's video, so stick around. What's up, my friends? US Army veteran Christopher Chaos, and today we're talking about the cool topic of what awesome attachments do I get to have on my Army weapon to look awesome, be more effective in combat, whatever the case is. We're gonna be talking about what commonly is on your weapon, what attachments you get, and a few other questions you may have kind of related to that topic. Now, there are a lot of different weapons that soldiers will have in the Army. I mean, you have the M2 50 caliber machine gun. You've got the M240 Bravo, which is also a machine gun. Some soldiers may have the pistol or the M9 Beretta 9mm pistol. But your most common weapon system that soldiers will have is the M4, and that's the main one we're gonna be talking about here when it comes to attachments. You can have attachments on pretty much all of those other weapon systems I talked about, but the main one people wanna know about is usually the M4. So we're gonna be talking about the attachments that are commonly maybe seen on the M4. There's a lot of possibilities for attachments and stuff, but some of the really crazy ones you may only see when you're in the Special Forces and the Rangers and some kind of other kind of special operations type of units. So we won't dive really into that much of in-depth kind of attachments. We'll kind of just mostly cover the ones that are more the common ones. Of course, with that, I'm gonna get the question of, can I use my own attachments? And the answer is maybe. Some of that is decided on what the attachment is, on the leadership, and a lot of other factors. So when I kind of go through and start talking about some of these attachments, I'll kind of briefly maybe even talk about if this is something you could use your own version of or couldn't, whatever. So your common M4 setup is usually either with a rail system or without a rail system. I feel like the without a rail system is fairly uncommon, but not impossible. There are some units I do see out there that have had it where they don't have the rail system on there, and that kind of definitely makes it a lot harder to be able to add cool attachments to it or things that make you more effective, whatever. But the ones with the rail system is usually the more common one. That rail system will allow you to attach multiple items, to attach other accessories, anything that you might need. So that one's usually the pretty common one. That definitely could probably play a factor maybe with the Reserves and National Guard. Reserves and National Guard, a lot of times they get the hand-me-downs from the active duty. Sometimes they don't get all the cool stuff, and usually the guys that are gonna use it all the time on active duty get the cool stuff, and then the guys in the Reserves kind of just get the leftovers because they're just gonna use it part-time when they're doing some training, and they might get the cool stuff maybe when they deploy, but that still kind of depends sometimes too. So let's start off talking about the optics, or the sights for the M4. Your really generic kind of one is just iron sights. That's what they're called. It's just the sights that are on the back with the front sight post to the front of the M4, and you just gotta kind of line up through the holes with the front sight post and make sure that you're lined up properly so you can hit the target. It's gonna be pretty common with like the carrying handle. That's the common setup usually with the M4 in the Army. It's not usually the cool ones with like flip up sights or anything like that. It's usually with the carrying handle. That is the common setup you might have for basic training as well, so kind of keep that in mind. You don't get any kind of cool optics or cool sights or anything like that for basic training. Usually it's just the standard iron sights. Now when you use your unit, you could still end up with iron sights sometimes too, but then there's two pretty common type of sights or optics that you might have with your weapon, and so let's talk about those two sights. The first one being the M68, the red dot, the aim point, however you kind of refer to it. The nomenclature is the M68, and it's just a little red dot inside of the optic that you zero in to make sure that red dot points to the target, and you pull the trigger, whatever that red dot was on is what it's gonna hit. That red dot does not like shoot out or anything like that. It's only inside of the optics. You only see it inside of there. It does not actually project onto the target. The other common one is the Acog. That one just has basically kind of like a small zoom to it. I think it's only like a 4x zoom to it with like a triangle or some kind of little kind of device on the inside of it that you use to kind of line up on it. I forget, it's been a while since I used the Acog, but I think it has like a little triangle, a little arrow kind of a thing that you're kind of lining the tip of that arrow to the target, and you have it zeroed in to where that's what it's gonna hit. And it gives you a small magnification, nothing cool and crazy like you're gonna be a sniper with the thing, but I think it's like only like a 4x zoom or a 6x zoom. I'm pretty sure I think it's a 4x. So it's only a small magnification, just to make it a little bit easier to hit some of those targets, but not necessarily to be like a sniper. And those two sights are your pretty common ones that you might see on the M4. So you're either stuck with iron sights, which is a sad day if that's what you get stuck with, or you get the M68 or you get an Acog. So when we're talking about the sights, there's probably some follow-on questions you might have. First one being, who gets what sight? So If the unit does not have enough like M68s or Acogs, then yeah, the lower enlisted soldiers, they're probably gonna get stuck with just simply iron sights, and that's what you're stuck with until the unit gets more sights and everybody can get something. The M68 is a pretty common one that maybe an E4 and below is pretty common to get issued onto their weapon, and then maybe your squad leaders, your E5 and aboves, get an Acog. A lot of that usually comes down to the unit level though, as far as what they have available to them. If they have enough Acogs that everybody gets an Acog, then cool, probably everybody gets an Acog. But so a lot of times units don't have that many Acogs. Usually it's like a combination of iron sights, M68s, Acogs, maybe even some other sights that are less common, but that usually comes down to your rank, your experience, your position, who needs what over other individuals, right? They're probably not gonna go and give like an Acog to the supply sergeant when we're short, individuals that really need it. They're gonna go out on mission, maybe like your infantry individuals, certain other individuals that are gonna be going out on mission commonly, where that supply sergeant is maybe just gonna be on the base all the time and they don't necessarily need an Acog. So there's a lot of factors that kind of go in there. Rank sometimes, your position, what you do, a lot of that kind of stuff, availability in the unit to determine which sight you're gonna get. Another related question to sights that you might have is, do I get to qualify with those sights? Commonly, yes. I always done it that way. Whichever sight I had for my weapon, I got to qualify with it. That does not include basic training though. In basic training, I have to use iron sights, but when you're at your unit, yeah, that's usually a pretty common thing. With that, you might be thinking, hey, some people have an advantage, right? Because they got a better sight than me or whatever, and yeah, that does happen. But usually the main thing with it is they want you to qualify with your weapon, with the sights you'd go into battle with and everything, your setup that you would go into battle with, and qualify with that setup. That way, when you do end up in a situation, or if you end up in a situation where you're in combat, you are, proficient and you're trained to use that setup. It'd be a horrible situation if you just qualified with iron sights and now you go off to battle and you're not very familiar with using the M68 or the Acog because you've never gotten to really touch that until now that you're deployed. A lot of other factors, but yes, commonly I have seen it where whatever weapon system setup you've got that's got whatever sight on it, that is the same sight you'll use to qualify during qualification with. That could vary at the unit level. There might be some units that are maybe a little bit more strict and they're like, no, everybody will qualify with iron sights and then we'll put the sights back on and then go through the trouble of zeroing them and getting them ready in case we have to go off somewhere with these stuff. I don't know, but there's maybe some situations that vary, but most commonly, the common situations I have personally seen is that you qualify with the same sights that are on your weapon, and that's the same weapon setup you go to combat with. Now, possibly another related question to that is, can I use my own? Maybe you have some cool sight that you got at home, you wanna purchase your own kind of a thing. Can you use it on your own weapon system? Maybe. Some of that comes down to your leadership, right? Your leadership may authorize it, may not authorize it type of thing, but usually your common thing is like, let's say you're in the position where you're issued an Acog, right? But you wanna use something else cooler, some cool sniper scope or something else cool that you've gotten from a local gun shop or whatever, and that's the sight that you wanna use. Well, that may not be an option for you to use your own sight. They may want you to use that Acog. Some common reasons you might have with that is, let's say that the version you're using is some civilian thing that's pretty cool to you, but it may not be, battle tested, and something goes wrong with it in a certain conditions in a certain battlefield environment that causes you not to be effective and screws up the whole mission. And then people want to know, why did the mission get screwed up? And you're like, well, my sight that I've got on here didn't work very well in the temperature or didn't work in this type of environment. And then they're kind of mad. They're like, well, why didn't you just use the one that we issued you? So you might have kind of the situations like that. That's probably just one reason why they might not want you to use your own type of sights, because they've tested those type of sights. Those ones have been tested in battlefield conditions where the one that you just happen to like on your civilian weapon may not have that same kind of testing. But I have heard of situations in certain environments, certain leadership, where they don't care too much, and depending on what it is you want to put on your weapon, they might authorize it. But commonly, most cases, people don't want to use their own. They'd rather just use what the Army issued them, or they're forced to use what the Army issued them. In those cases, I've rarely seen it where anybody uses their own specific type of sight. Before I move into the next item, I want to make sure that you're subscribed to this channel. So make sure you take a look down below, hit that subscribe button if you are not subscribed. Also click on the bell so you get alerts as soon as new videos go live, to include the live streams and become part of that awesome notification platoon. So let's move on, shall we? So that was quite a bit with sights. Let's move on to some other attachments. Another one that you might see with some soldiers is the PEC 15. There's other versions of it. There's like the PEC 2, there's another version. I don't even know if there's, might be even a version after the PEC 15. I have no idea, but the version I know of is the PEC 15. And what is the PEC 15? So the PEC 15 usually gets mounted on the weapon somewhere in a convenient location, because what it's gonna do is it emits two lasers. One that's kind of on the target so that you can hit it. You're zeroing it in to where it's accurate, so that way when you have the laser on the target, that's what it's gonna hit when you fire your weapon. And then another laser is used to illuminate the target during the night. The key thing with the PEQ-15 is that it's only useful at night. It's not something you use during the day, and it's only useful when wearing the night vision goggles, because you can only see it with the night vision goggles. Someone that does not have any night vision is using just the naked eye, they're not gonna be able to see this laser that is emitting from the PEQ-15. So the advantage of that is some soldiers that are going to clear a building, some night operations, whatever, they have their MVGs on, they have the PEQ-15 on, and if it's zeroed and all accurate and dialed in and everything like that, it makes it easier for them to hit the targets during the night and even illuminate targets if it's in a really dark area, to be able to light it up so they can see the targets with the MVG goggles, the night vision. And also this way, the enemy can't see the laser, moving all around as the soldier is moving their weapon around to look for targets or clear rooms or whatever. The laser's not bouncing all over the place as they're trying to do so. So this is a pretty cool high-speed thing, but not everybody's gonna get this thing. The common individuals I have personally seen that have like PEQ-15s is your infantry individuals, your combat arms individuals, people that are going to be doing these type of night operations where they're going to be going through and clearing buildings, going through and doing raids or whatever. Not just your common individual is gonna have one because they don't need it. So it is gonna be based on who really needs to have a PEQ-15 to be able to do that type of operation. There's a few more things that we're still gonna talk about that you commonly could have attached to the weapon, but I would like to hear from some of you guys in the comment section down below as far as what is something you would want on your M4? What is your ideal type of setup? I would like to hear all your different creative ideas down in the comment section down below as far as what you think would look cool or what you think would be useful or whatever the case is. Make sure you comment down below, and if you have no specific preference, just make sure you tell me something down in the comments. We gotta feed that YouTube algorithm so this video gets recommended to other individuals. So, you know what, just tell me what your favorite maybe Call of Duty weapon is, or your favorite, video game weapon is down in the comment section down below. That'll help as well. So make sure you leave some sort of comment down below. I feel like I should add into here the silencer. I mean, it's not a very common attachment, so don't expect to get a cool silencer unless you're in that specific type of situation. I mean, there's a lot of infantry people I know that didn't even get silencers. The main individuals I usually see with silencers are usually your special operations individuals for the most part. Occasionally I had seen maybe some scouts or certain infantry individuals at higher ranking levels that had a silencer on their weapon, but if you're just some low ranking private, you might not get a cool silencer or whatever, even if you're in like an infantry unit. Now, another common attachment you might see with some soldiers is like a flashlight. A common kind of brand that like I used was the Surefire. That was the brand name of that flashlight. It is bright as hell. It uses these very special batteries that are also pretty pricey, but usually you can get them from your supply. If you have the flashlight, you can get them from the supply individual for free and add it to your weapon, right? As far as the batteries go, the actual light itself just kind of comes down to availability. As an example, my second deployment, we actually got a bunch of Surefires. Our supply had a bunch of them, so they gave them out to a bunch of us that were commonly out on mission at night and everything like that. So I had one, it even had a cool little button, I think down by near the trigger to be able to turn it on and turn it off very easily, and that thing was bright as hell and came quite handy, when doing night operations. Because you're out on night operations, you're just using it to kind of like look around, you're doing your 5s and 25s as it's called, to get out of the vehicle and kind of check 5 meters around the vehicle and then 25 meters around the vehicle, and it's very handy at night to be able to illuminate the area, and it shines pretty bright if you got the Surefire version. There's probably other versions that shine pretty bright, but that one is a pretty common one that some individuals might end up with. That's usually not necessarily restricted to certain individuals, but it may only be a common thing maybe in a combat zone. If you're not in a combat zone, you're just going to the field or whatever, it may not be so common. Another one that's a very simple one is the Bipod grip handle. It's just attaches to like the front of the M4 onto the rail system, and it's got a little button that kicks out the legs, and you can use it to rest the weapon on, when you're down in the prone position, to be able to fire from the prone very easily and more stable, and then you can collapse it down just to use it as a cool grip. I had one of those as well, and that was another kind of free supply thing that they gave to us during my second deployment, so you got the hook up pretty easily, but I think they're also pretty cheap too. I've also seen a lot of people that just buy their own of that one. So that would be a very easy one to just add yourself, to purchase it yourself, to put it on your weapon, kind of along the same lines with the flashlight too. If you wanted to go buy your own to attach to your weapon, you could probably do that very easily. Now, the one thing I will kind of caution with you as far as using your own attachments is that if it is not something that is tracked by the Army, something that actually was issued to you for attaching to the weapon, it's not necessarily the safest thing to leave it on the weapon. Let me kind of give you an example with that, all right? When I returned from my second deployment, I had the Acog on it, I had the Surefire flashlight, I had the Bipod on there, and the Surefire flashlight and the Bipod were free. They were just given to me. Acog is accounted for, that it goes with the weapon, that is accounted with the weapon and the serial number and everything like that. So when we came back from my second deployment, we had to turn in all of our weapons. When all of our weapons got turned in, they later then went in for maintenance. We just came back from a war zone. They want to make sure that these weapons are still good to go and everything like that to be used for continue on training or whatever. So they got sent off to somewhere on base for these civilians and everything to go through and do maintenance on the weapons to make sure that they are still serviceable and nothing needs to be fixed. Or if they do need to be fixed, then repair them. So with that weapon that I had for mine, that Acog goes with the weapon, so it stayed with the weapon, but that flashlight and that Bipod handle was not really tracked or kind of accounted for, so it turned up missing. And there's no way to really track it because that's not something that was issued to me. That was not something that was being tracked by the arms room, by the armor, by the unit or anything like that. So they don't know whether it's supposed to have a Surefire flashlight and a Bipod or not, because that was not something assigned to that weapon. That's something additionally that I added, that I received for free and added to my weapon. So that would go the same kind of concept if you wanted to add your own stuff to it, your own sights, your own flashlight, your own whatever. You attach that to the weapon and then that weapon goes off to maintenance or goes off somewhere else and that item turns up missing, there's no real way to kind of like complain about it and be like, hey, I put this on the weapon and it didn't come back with that. And they'd be like, well, that's your fault. You shouldn't have put that on your weapon. We're not responsible for you attaching your own private items to this weapon. So that's kind of the key thing when you want to add your own cool flavor to that weapon. You just have to be cautious of those type of things. Probably also mentioned in here is slings. I've seen conversations of that if people want to know about like the sling on the weapon. And yes, you do get a sling with it, but the common one you're going to get is just the simple 2-point type of harness type of sling that just connects to the front and connects to the back, and that's it. If you want anything else high speed, like the 3-point harness ones, anything cool and flashy, you have to buy that yourself. And that's usually allowed, that's fine. I did that during, I think both of my deployments, my first and second deployment, I had the 3-point one, just because it made it a lot easier to carry and it was a lot more comfortable. So yeah, adding your own sling, that's probably fine. Just don't do anything weird like you want some kind of cool hot pink sling or something that really stands out. It's gonna have to be all black. And usually if you're shopping for a sling like on post or something like that, they're gonna be all black anyways. So now you know about some of the common attachments that maybe could be applied to your M4, but maybe you wanna know what is the common loadout that maybe you're gonna go out to a combat zone with. Well, I got a video that kind of discussed that right there. If you wanna see my latest video upload, I have it available to you right there. The links are down in the description box for social media, for my website, for some affiliate links. Check them out. I'm Christopher Chaos. Thanks for hanging out. I'll see you next time. See ya.